Good evening, everybody.
So
I'd like to welcome you guys to Sunday Connections. Whose first Sunday Connections is this? All right, yeah, it is. So Sunday Connections is a time where we get together and we have speakers come in. They talk about their spiritual journey through lives, or just give us a message in general about spiritual subjects and things like that. So I want to read a quote here out of this book. So Rich Haws wrote Connecting the Dots. And if you guys haven't read this, I suggest you read it. It's a pretty good book. When you give someone your time, you are giving them a portion of your life that you will never get back. Your time is your life. That is why the greatest gift you can give someone is your time. Rick Warren. So the reason that falls in is because I want to thank you, Rich, personally, and on behalf of all of us for giving us your time today. It means a lot. I know you just flew in from Arizona and you came right off the plane to come here, so you guys think, it's been a busy day. We've had a lot to do. Well, that's life, that's just what happens. So with that, Rich is going to talk about change tonight, and I'd like everybody to give him a warm welcome, please.
are we live now? We can hear? Great, thank you. Good, thank you. Russell, thank you for the introduction. And Craig Case, thank you for helping write that book. It is a fun book. It was a fun project for Craig and I to do together, to tell you some stories and a little bit about the history. So as you have an opportunity to read that book, it'll give you a little background. And tonight, let me just tell you, I love coming back to this room. So I'm glad that we're here tonight to do this message that I'm going to share with you tonight. Love Arbinger and love the opportunity that we have to meet in that building, but to meet with you here tonight is really special. And so I appreciate it. I had to straighten up one picture. Nothing drives me crazier than seeing pictures, crooked on the wall. But thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for being part of Red Barn. We're going to talk tonight a little bit about my journey, and then I'm going to leave some time, so I'm going to have you thinking about your journey here at both Red Barn and prior to Red Barn. And then where are you going after Red Barn? We're going to talk a little bit about change. And change is probably we call it pivoting, changing. That's one of the things that we talk a lot about Red Barn, because there is always an opportunity to change. The interesting statement that is made about change, which I'll introduce to you right now, and we'll talk a little bit about this. I think this is the way it works. Let's try this. So look, this quote, and if you have something to write down, or if you can do this, but when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So I'm going to ask you and be thinking about that. So it's going to be a little bit rhetorical. I'm going to ask you to be thinking about that tonight, because then I'm at the end of my discussion with you in presentation, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the changes in my life. I'm going to ask you, how does that resonate, or what does that mean to you? When you change the way that you look at something, how does that change the way you look at other things? So that quote that's there with you, so it does change the things that you look at. And so think about that. It's kind of a heavy statement, but I want you to sit on that and just rest with it for a little bit. I'm going to go through some examples with you, and then I'm going to ask you to be thinking about that and how that resonates with you as we talk about here tonight. Okay? So we start with this picture. Have you seen this before? A lot of us have seen it, right? So originally, when you look at that, by raise of hands, who sees the old lady first? Right? And that's the first thing that I looked at when I saw that. When you see the beautiful lady that's there, can you all see the beautiful lady? Everybody? Does anybody need any help seeing the beautiful lady? You can't? You can't see her? So here, this inscription on the bottom will help you. My wife and my mother-in-law, they're both in this picture. And so the old lady you can see with the mouth, right? And the wart on her nose and all of that, you can see that, right? The beautiful, so my wife, is the one that has the eyelashes right here, the nose, and her chin and her neck with a bracelet on. Does that make sense now? Yeah. Yeah. So when you change the way that you look at something, it changes what you look at. You see how that kind of works? So if you're changing how you're looking at now this picture, it changes the way that you feel or look at that whole situation. Knowing both, still for me, when I see this picture, the old lady still is the most dominant. And why is that? I asked myself that. Why is that old lady the most dominant one that I see versus the beautiful lady? And as I look at that, I had a grandmother that looked like the old lady. She looked like that. And so when I see that, it reminds me of my grandmother, Nab, and she kind of looked like that. And she had a fur coat and she kind of looked at that. So I see that. So it's what I'm used to seeing. So a lot of times change is hard because the things that we're used to looking at form in our mind perception, form in our minds how we perceive a situation to be. And so, but as you look at it long enough, you can change the way that you see then the beautiful lady. But always, when I look at it, that's always going to be front and center. And so it's just being, and we're going to end with a slide as we go through the stories I share with you about awareness. And it's just about being aware of what your background is, what you see, and what's going on in your life. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of some of my story as we go through and so do this. See that kid in the middle? The buck teeth and the football? That's me. This is what, so how many of you know who Spanky and my gang are? Okay, all right, you've heard the story. This is Spanky in my gang. And I used to, in the backyard, used to have, these were my neighbor buddies, and that's my little sister. And we would play football in the backyard. Football was my very favorite thing to do. And we had, and back in those days, we had like 4 lots that were all hooked together, and you didn't have fences that you grew up on, and you ran across each other's backyard, and we did all that. And this guy was the bully of our neighborhood, Eldon Larson. Eldon Larson was our bully. And I talk a little bit about in the book that Craig and I did. The reason why I share this with you is that growing up, football, I loved it. And I still have to this day. If I pulled up my shirt, I have right here in my navel a lead mark that's still sitting right here. And the story behind that is be careful on whose back you jump on. Ends up that Eldon Larson, that we would play football against, would carry, remember the old days when you carry pencils in your back pocket? Well, he would sharpen his pencils on purpose, and he would carry them right here in his back pocket. And whenever we'd go out and play football, so one time he was running with a football, I jumped on his back to tackle him, and a pencil went right up in my stomach. And I still, to this day, have the dark spot where the lead was. They had to pull it out, and it was bleeding, and it wasn't that bad. We just, put some dirt on it and kept on playing football back in those days. But I share that with you because I had to make a decision growing up. I love football. But I also, not only did I have the Eldon Larson experience, I broke my arm. These are not my original front teeth. I had, how you have your hooky on, I call them hooky honors. They're right there on the front of your lip inside. I have 13 hooky honors because when I got tackled one time playing football in high school, I played quarterback. Back then, they didn't have very many 6 foot. At that time, I was 6'3", but the 6'3" quarterbacks. And I got tackled, and it pulled away all of the gums all the way down to my chin, and they had to go in and sew up my chin back up to my teeth. So I, to this day, still have a lot of scars. I have a scar on my lip. I have a lot of scars. I figured that if football is going to be that rough in high school, I'm going to look at a different sport. I also played basketball, but I actually had more offers to go play football in college than I did basketball. So I had to make a decision. And so I changed my senior year in high school. My thinking was I'm going to work harder at basketball than I am football. And I ended up playing basketball up at Utah State, and that's another story. And the message to you is the changes that happen along our lives affect where we go. And so the message I wanted to share then with you is that change was significant in my life. Here's another change I want to show you. So this is a map of the world. My very, very favorite class. And this is where I'll get into the spirituality of what some of these things meant to me. Because I grew up in a home that wasn't real spiritual, and it was just it was kind of a normal Mayberry, had a great mom. My dad, I didn't know real well. It was kind of a tough experience. He was in the Air Force, and so I grew up in the military. We moved around a little bit. Didn't have a great relationship with my dad. My mom, though, was wonderful, amazing. But as I grew up, spirituality for me was once in a while I went to church with her when she made me, but I really didn't have really a strong feeling about God or what happened in my life. I had a fellow my senior year as I was playing down at in the state championship when we were playing basketball. And he ended up at the end of the game, we won the state championship that year, a long time ago, when most of you guys were probably born, a long time ago. And but he wrote me a letter that meant a lot. And his name was George Durant. George Durant ended up having two boys play ball at BYU. And he wrote me a letter that made all the difference in the world to me as I was out playing. He said, watching you play and the way that you played made a difference both in my life and in my boy's life. And realizing that what I did made an impression on somebody else made a big difference to me. And so I thought, well, maybe I can impact others through basketball and the way I act. And so he wrote a book called A Boy and a Ball. If you ever want to get a fun read that talks a little bit about that experience. And so when I went up to Utah State, there was a fellow by the name of Wayne Estes. Have any of you know that name? Have you ever heard of that name before? Great case. You'd have to be a little bit older because it goes back to 1965. 1965 was a fellow. Now, this is a story that W should know because I know he signed a scholarship to go to Utah State. Did anybody else go up to Utah State in here? Any other Aggies? W, you the only one? W, I know, signed it because he was a highly recruited football player and the quarterback as well back in the day. How many years ago, W, was that? Long time ago. Kind of like my story. Long time ago. But a good story. And Utah State back then, so in 1965, one of the top players in the nation was a fellow by the name of Wayne Estes. Wayne Estes, we had 4 games left to go in the season, and he had just scored 48 points against the University of Denver. And after he left the game, he was going and leaving with a friend of his, and they were going down and leaving the game. Up at Utah State, there's a pretty steep road. And as you leave the stadium, as you go down this road, somebody had gone off the road and had hit a power pole and knocked it down. And so he had stopped with his other point guard. His name was Greg Harrop. He had stopped with his point guard. And Greg walked right, and so they walked over to go see if they could help this couple that were in this car. Greg walks underneath the power line. Wayne, being 6'6", brushed the top of the power line, and it killed him instantly. And he was my hero growing up. I was in then junior high school, and it was heartbreaking for me to see what happened to him and that story. And I would go around when I was in college. I took Wayne's shoe, size 14 at that time, and would take it around and tell stories about Wayne Estes. At that year, Wayne Estes was actually, you'll remember a fellow by the name of Rick Barry. Rick Barry was a famous basketball player. Right behind Rick Barry was a fellow by the name of Gail Goodrich. Gail Goodrich signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. That was not their original choice. The original choice was going to be Wayne Estes. I tell you that story only because of things that happen in our lives do change where we go and what happens. So during that period of time at Utah State, the reason I tell you that story is that I learned as I went around, and I would talk to youth groups, and I'd talk to men and mixed. I'd go over to ward houses and talk at church groups and tell stories about Wayne Estes and also about change and how we can be better people. The one person that made this probably the single biggest difference in my life was a fellow by the name of Jim Dorghetti. Jim Dorghetti, reason why I have this map up here, taught a class called World Religions. World Religions was my very single favorite class that I took at Utah. And taking that class, I was able to discover that how big this world is and how many different faiths and how many different types of religions. And there's hundreds of different religions and hundreds of different ways that people believe. And it was amazing to me because I was raised in a Mormon community that was here. My mother was Mormon and LDS and was raised me that way. And so I was raised around that influence. I had no idea how big this world really was. And it was fascinating to me. And it was during that period of time that really faith and religion really became something of importance to me. And up to that time, I was just so interested in football and then basketball that really faith and religion to me hadn't really resonated yet in my life, hadn't really gotten there. But what I found out as I moved on with my life, both at Utah State, and I wrote up this word awareness, as I started to become aware that there is, to me, and I found out when I was studying, there is to the rest of the world a higher power. There is somebody, I couldn't find one religion or one group of people that didn't believe in some force greater than themselves. Now, it varies, obviously, all over the world as to who and what that is. But I found this one key important part, that people that believe in somebody higher than themselves and that have a faith that there is somebody that is still guiding our journey here, that they had a better experience in life than those that did not. And really, that's my message to you tonight, is that I found that by being able to believe in somebody that had an influence in my life, and that can be a lot of different things for a lot of different people, as I found out throughout all the world. But I found for me to believe that there really is somebody that's interested in me, it made a huge difference in how I felt like towards myself and how I felt towards other people. And so my message to you tonight is that the change in our lives, and hopefully the change that happens with you here at Red Barn, is one of faith, one of being able to believe in yourself and also be able to believe in each other and believe that change is possible. And that through change, as we look at how we look at things, we will find a different way of looking at things. And that would be, so that's my message. And what I'd like to be able to do tonight is have you share a little bit as to some of the things that maybe have changed in your thinking while either you have been here or while you're wanting to, because you've seen a lot of changes here at Red Barn, either in yourself as well as even Red Barn continues to evolve. I know here I go a leaf for 1 week and all these things happen. And there's a lot of things that happen. And as I jokingly had told John, I says, that's why we have Red Barn. And I would be disappointed if there weren't those things happening here. Now, it creates challenges in our life. It creates opportunities for us to really find out who we really are and what's important to us. And so as I learned while I was gone, because I was talking to John and I talked to Janie, and I think most of you know that, Janie's father passed away yesterday. And so she's had a change in her life. Other things that have happened while you've been here and things that are happening both personally to you as well as outside of your control, all those changes are going on all the time. And my hope and my message to you tonight is that change is a very important tool for you to learn how to deal with and how that change can help build your faith in a higher power and in God and whatever that means to you. Because I'm going to tell you that's why this bracelet is so important to me. The first one is that one that stands within is you, right? And so my hope is that as you learn to understand better who you are, you realize that there is somebody that is higher and more powerful than us that has an interest in you as well. Because I have found that out for myself, and that's been what has sustained me as I've lost a son, as I've lost a wife, as I've lost a mother and father, as I've lost other people in my life, and a lot of obstacles that have happened in my life. And that's the reason Red Barn's here. It is a symbol of change. And hopefully that symbol of change for you is it will change your life. So that's really what I'd like to do. So let's take a minute. I'd like to be able to then have you share. And I'd like to be able to call on a few possibly. But before I do that, is there someone right now that as I'm talking that has something as to this concept of change that they would like to share?
Yeah, I'm Mark. So how I've changed in the serendipitous encounter of virtuosity. I read your book, and I remembered in your book this kind of has been changing me here for myself. And my serendipitous encounter with virtuosity is me, with what I'm learning about me. And it's a really strange thing, but it's working. And what I took from your book and how this has helped me is the choices you made. I think you was probably just out of college or just starting on your career into your basketball. And you chose smart people and church to be around those kind of people. And you had friends, a lot of friends that didn't. And a lot died. And you ended up creating all of this. And there's more than once a week that I'll look. So maybe you're my serendipitous encounter with virtuosity. Because I'll look at just driving around and thinking, I'm driving on one of these roads that this man thought of even back then with that choice. So even at my age, what I'd like to say is, thanks for putting that in my head. And I'm wanting to make that kind of change in my life at this part because the last 10 or 20 years of my life, I want to be really special and really good. So this is mine. Being able to stand up and talk in front of you guys is my encounter. And I know for a fact that the Holy Spirit has always been with me since the day every one of my children were born. And but the strength grows in here with those encounters and what I'm learning here. So thank you, Rich. All right, yeah.
Thank you. And just on that point that Mark shared, write them down. And that's the part that I've learned is I write the stories that you're talking about down for your, not only for your future posterity or that, but for yourself. Because by putting pen to paper, which Craig will talk more about in another time that he comes and speaks, but the very process of writing down your story anchors the thought process, and actually as you're writing down, words will come to your mind and your brain will function differently than just thinking about it. If you'll actually write them down, you will be prompted, and there are things, and Mark talks about the Holy Spirit. I'm a big believer that we do have outside influences that influence the decisions that we make and that prompt us and guide us. There's not a question in my mind. There's too many things that have happened in my life that I can tell you that I felt like somebody's had me right by the nape of the neck and drug me around and saying, this is what you should be doing. And when I listen to that, usually pretty good things happen. When I don't listen to it, things don't always turn out so well. So thanks, Mark. Thanks for sharing. And to what he pointed out is the choice that we had is that as I was drafted by the Seattle Supersonics, which was an interesting opportunity. And I still look back at this day, and $50,000 40 years ago was a lot of money. And turning that down was, some people thought I was crazy, but as it turned out, it really did open up some doors that were really pretty good. So, all right, we have another hand that was out there before I call on you. You're gonna get called on, so yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Matthew. Where I started a change in my life was thinking most of my life growing up that I was worthless and uncared for. And then when my little one was born, I kind of decided that I'm not worthless. I'm not loved. I need to change that way of thinking. So I changed my perception of life and continue to grow, start to teach myself things and try to broaden my horizons and just kind of grow up and get away from the negative aspects of life.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, anybody else? Yeah.
So hi everybody, my name is Brandon A. Since I've been here, what I've learned is critical thinking, really to play the tape through and analyze the situations before I just act irrational, because that's what I used to do in my life. I'd really act irrational and run from my problems. But since I've been here, I get to play the tape through in all these situations. It's in the smaller scale, right? So we get grouped, right? And we get everybody gives us feedback, but then I get to really look at like what my behaviors are on a smaller scale. But I don't know, it's helping me play the tape through in my life.
Okay. And when you play that tape through, question for you, what prompts you as you play that tape all the way through that really goes on in your thinking? What does that look like inside your head to help everybody else when you talk about it? We hear that phrase a lot, play the tape all the way through, right? So what does that really look like in your mind when you play that through? Is that something that visually you see, or you feel outside influences or promptings, or what happens with that process?
For me, I just see where my life is went. I get to see where it's went and where I don't want to go. And I get to see all the positive things that are happening in my life. And I don't know, I get a lot of stinking thinking or like negative thoughts. Like, God, this is hard right now in this moment, but it's just a moment, right? So, but in my head, I just try to stay positive with everything that's going on, right? With like all the consequences, the hours, as much as I can stay positive, that's what really helps me. I mean, sometimes it's an internal battle inside of my head, but since I've been here, been able to persevere through some of these struggles, that's what's really helped me out, just persevering through it, and the character and just the camaraderie and the brotherhood that we have here. Just seeing other men going through that same struggle helps me know that I can get through it too and make better decisions than I have in the past.
Good.
I don't know if that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to visit with you about tonight, and we'll keep going with some other stories here, is that it was brought to my attention. We've got a board meeting on Tuesday that some of you will have a chance to be able to present and talk to the board of directors here. One of the things that you're being taught, and hopefully that class, John, we're still working on that, right? Of each one of them having their own board of directors. correct?
Yeah, part of it.
The mindfulness class. And so all of you are working on having your own board of directors. And the reason why I asked that question, one of the helps that can really influence you as you look at playing the tape forward, which I like that. But here's what I'm going to challenge you to suggest that you do as you play it forward. Involve your own personal board of directors. As you play it through and look at where maybe you're the past and where you're going as you're talking about that story, use your own board of directors to, and while it might sound kind of weird, I'm going to promise you that it's been one of the best tools in my life is I've made decisions in my life to literally sit down and feel the influence of my own personal board of directors. And that sometime I'm happy to come talk to you about who those people are. But as you put your own together, as you're taught in the mindfulness class, as we get to that point, if you'll just you just try to visualize those people sitting with you when you're trying to play that tape through, it will actually help. It'll help you come up with a decision and a path that maybe you wouldn't have thought of otherwise as you do that. So here's the thought I was going to share with you. It came to my attention that one of the things we'll talk about at the board is that obviously there's been a lot of change at the, as Michael Haws, which I got to tell you, that was really one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do is to let my own son go. And there were some things going on here at the farm that, and happy to talk about it as being transparent as we would want to be with that. But he was not being the example to you that we wanted as a board and as even as his dad, that we wanted him to be. And so it was important we let him go. You had Michael Page that came here for a short period of time, a little bit of a different cat. And he came and was here for a short period of time. And then he decided that this really wasn't for him. But you've got some leadership that is here right now that I believe will be here for the long haul, or at least the purpose of Red Barn will be served by who's here with you right now. Love the leadership that you have here right now. But one of the statements that came up is that recovery is not as fun, put that word up there, not as fun as it used to be. And I don't know how many of you were here in the really beginning when Michael and some of those fun outings that were there that was happening on a very frequent basis, is that it was really up to the board and to us and saying, really recovery, he had coined a phrase that I'll share with you, that having fun in recovery. And while the process of recovery should be a positive experience in your life, it's not necessarily fun. And I'll share with you, it's hard work. The process of being sober and the process of following the rules and the process of doing the next right thing, or each one teach one, whatever phrases we come up with, it's hard work. And it really is not always fun. It's not to say that we can't have a good time doing a trunk or treat, like she just did, and to have some positive experiences and interaction with your loved ones and your family and with your brothers that are here. We'll always want to see that, but it was getting out of balance. And that was one of the reasons. So I'm here, and I promised that I'd share with you tonight that really the concept of just having fun here at Red Barn, that's really not what we're about. We're about change. We really are. We're about changing your life. And that's my hope for you. And that's my hope for each one of us, is that I hope I continue to change to be better as I go along. And it's not always fun. And always, there's every place that I go and everything that we do, there's still a challenge that even at this age, 71 years old, I still face every single day, that there's parts of it that are not fun, but I need to go do. And I take responsibility. I hope that that's something that you'll learn and be part of here as well. All right, with that fun thing, let's have a few more examples as we go along here that would like to share. Yeah.
I'm Brandon H. Thinking about change. I've always been one that didn't think the rules apply to me. Quick to disregard anybody and anything. I didn't care about anything but me. And going to Red Barn, I'm realizing I also had no boundaries. I had nothing. Like it was, my life was really gone. Here I can set healthy boundaries. I can care about what other people feel or and actually get to hear them. I don't. I'm just getting disregarded. You know, I get to interact and actually care and step up like that and apply it to my life and see the way others look at me and you know get a better open mindedness towards myself. I do so. You know, it's really quite the experience so far. I got gratitude. I've never really expressed gratitude and been able to really be thankful for something, thankful change inside. So sometimes I just want to jump for joy because I've changed and I'm just doing a spark every day.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Dustin.
The question I ask myself a lot lately is, what's different about me this time? Like, I'm really deep right here. I think it's about connection, you know? If you go through this program before, I was getting my word, I didn't connect. When I graduated, I lost connection and I found myself right when I understand better that I was in with the word, you know? It was like a dog coming back with his tail between his legs. I asked myself this question a lot lately, you know, what's different this time? And I think a lot of it is being a part of something bigger than me and just wanting to help others. So I mean, I think that's what's inspired me to set a plan and have goals this time and give me hope.
Thanks, Dustin.
Yeah, and to Dustin's point, that was the, I would hope that as you come here, and I'm sure the first day that you come to Red Barn, you say, I can only imagine, because this is what I would do, is that how quickly can this 2 years get past? How do I just bite my tongue and just sweat it out, right? That's got to be your first tendency, is just say, how do I just get through the next 2 years? And then you hear the phrases, one day at a time, just take the next day, take the next step, just do that. But it's a process that I've shared this many times as I've spoken to this group before, is that how I admire each one of you, because I can only imagine how difficult it is to come live with 80 other men and do what you do every single day and have kind of a Groundhog Day in a way. But the way that I'm suggesting tonight that you change that, and I think you already know this in your heart, is that if you would come here when you come to Red Barn and change the way that you look at things, right? That's kind of the motto here. You'll change the things that you look at. And so my hope would be, as you leave here tonight, that you'll, as you write in your journal tonight, and as you think about your stay here at Red Barn, you will change the way you look at Red Barn, rather than as just coming in to just do your time. But that you'll really look at it in a way that, how can I change my life? And I can promise you one thing when you do that. When you change the way you look at your experience here at Red Barn, you will change the things that you look at, which will mean you'll change the things within your life that you do need to change. So that process and that phrase, when I hear it, when you change the things that you look at, but will come out when you change the way that you think and the way that you look at it. So when you change the way you look at Red Barn and your experience here, promptings will come into your life and things will come into your mind of what I need to work on, what you've heard here tonight a little bit. You've heard that things and thoughts will come into your head. I need to change this. Write them down and work on them, because the process of just changing the way you look at your experience here at Red Barn will change the things that you look at here at Red Barn. So when you see something that happens at Red Barn, like you saw last week, which I know is challenging, but if you'll change the way you look at it, I promise you that the things that you look at regarding that will change. I promise you. Because I know even when I heard about, like with Frederick and with what's gone on and others that we get to know you and things that happen, is that I often just try to change my thinking. How is that going to help Frederick? and where he's going to be. How's that going to help each one of you? Your experiences here, to me, are not for naught. Really not. Even some of the tough experiences, John, that we go through here are just, to me, they're just opportunities for us to be able to change. Not only the person that maybe is caught up in a situation, but for those that are sharing that experience with them, you have an opportunity to change the way you look at it. And when you change the way you look at it, I promise you that you will change the way that you see the situation. If you'll make that kind of a change, if you do that. A couple more before we leave here tonight. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good change of attitude, because I think when you first came here, was that your first thought when you first came here? Yeah, no, I think as you, we see that in all of you as you change as you go through the experience that you have here. I'll tell you one story quickly. I had a phone call this week while I was out of town. It's a good friend of mine, and you would know him if I said his name. I don't want to embarrass him. He brought his whole family this last week over to Red Barn Chicken, and he hadn't been there since we changed it from Sticky Bird over to Red Barn Chicken. It had been a couple of months since he's been there. He said, "What in the world did you guys do?" And I thought, "Oh no, what happened?" And he says, "That's the best meal we have ever had at a fast food restaurant in our entire lives." And so I told him a little bit about the story of how the students and how you all are the ones that are making this experience. Just the lives that you touch by being there, that you wouldn't even know what you did and who did it. I don't know who was the one that actually created that. It was probably a couple of you that created that experience. I got to tell you, there's not a, so that I have that kind of thing happen to me almost every single day, whether it's Red Barn Chicken. I've got really one of my best golfing buddies owns, I've shared this a little bit before, owns Bailey's Moving and Storage. Or he's the CEO of Bailey's Moving and Storage. And he said, "I would take every one of your guys on over with me as soon as they're ready to move on." He says, "I love what you guys do over there." He says, "In fact, probably most of my guys should be over in Red Barn right now." So it's just the impact that you have out in the community because of the changes that you're making in your lives and what you do. I mean, just as we were talking as we came home, as we were where's Jeff? Yeah, Jeff, there you're hiding behind. So just as we went by the home that's right there on my corner, Abel Porter. As we went by Abel Porter's house, when I go to church and I have an opportunity to see Abel, there isn't a time that we don't see Abel and Martha. They don't talk something really positive about Red Barn Movers. And so you have so many different places. And I will tell you, who's here that was on the cleanup over at the home there in Bountiful this last week? My hands. Amazing job. Amazing job. The before and after pictures of that home. Have you seen them? Have you seen the after it was all over, what you guys were able to do? It's just the before and after. It ought to give you some really good pride in your hearts about what you were able to do. And that was one of my wife Steph's, that was her sister home. And it was the old Crosby home that you were able to clean up and get all there. And I'm happy to tell you that it's actually under contract to the family that loves what you've done. So the impact that you have by changing your lives, I don't think you don't get to hear all the time. And so here tonight, I'm going to tell you that in our little community of Davis County and around, you have a tremendous impact. And if you'll continue to focus on just that change and being that best self that you can be, it's amazing the lives that you touch. One last share before we close up. Yeah, right here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Charles. So what I've learned since being here is, before I got here, I held on to a lot of shame and guilt. And basically, I didn't want to hold myself accountable for those choices. I wanted to sit in it instead of actually taking the steps and the action to better my life. And every day is a blessing. Every day I get a choice to learn from my mistakes instead of just run from them or think I was this unfixable person, because I know I'm not. I know none of us are, and it's just the way I was raised. With my higher power and prayer, repentance, and forgiveness, and just having a total change of heart. This place is it gave me the opportunity to practice those things in a real life setting. So I want to say thank you.
One last one then. We had one last.
Hey guys, I'm Jacob.
So
Change. One thing that I think is just change in time. You cannot change without time. In my 21 months of being here, the most important thing that I did was forgive myself, find self-love again. And you guys may not want to hear this, but I did that through my service hours. There was a point in my program when Isaac was my house manager and he buried me in 100 hours. I had 100 court hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did service for 3 months every single day. And in that time, I used that time to not only think about the things that I was doing every day that was getting me those hours, but the things that I had done in my life before I got here. And how, I had a lot of guilt, things that I had held against myself that I had never forgiven myself for. In that time period, it was in my resident phase, and it was the most important part of my program. I was able to find self-love, forgive myself, and be content in my everyday life and the decisions that I make moving forward. So that's what I got for you.
And to that point, so that you all know, and I shared before, the research that we did when we first started Red Barn, we looked at a lot of the 30, 60, 90-day type programs, and some of my own children had gone through those. But we found there's no substitute for time. Your message about time is so important. It does take time to be able to build the habits and to reconcile some of the past and get you to where you really want to be in your lives. It does take time. And I was really impressed when John shared the numbers of those that are opting into a third year, because it just shows that you recognize as well the importance of time and giving back in your lives. I saw one more hand. I promise this is the last one right here.
Everybody has their own kind of families, they're being violent. Well, that's me, that's why I'm here. I have a temper, when I first got here, wanted to eat here at first. And then I bought into it, and I'm buying into it. And so I have a tendency to be lash out, but I'm fighting them. The connections I have made here with the brothers is very good. And, it seems to be helping, every day is, finding myself become more and more mellow. I appreciate the help you give me. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, we'll wrap up with just this last comment to you. Thank you for being who you are. I love what we do here at Red Barn. I love the stories that come out of Red Barn, even the hard stories. While I'm out of town and we hear about it, Frederick, or we hear about other things that happen, that we have a concept that I introduced at graduation, and you heard it, called Hamburger Days. And each day that you're here and you're doing something positive in your life is a win. Each day. And if you look at it the same way and gain confidence from that, you'll be amazed how quickly those hamburger days add up to really end up being the 700-800 days that you are here as you get through it. So thank you for listening tonight. Participating.
All right, I just want to say thank you, Rich, for that subject change. It's cool how you talked about the gentleman who taught the world religion classes, because one of the things when I first started getting incarcerated, I read a book called The World's Religions, and it kind of opened up my mind, created a paradigm shift to where I could see things a little bit different. And that's really where my change started to come from. That's where I was willing to try different things, and being here at Red Barn, you're going to get a lot of change. You're going to get the change from intern to freshman, from freshman to resident to senior resident. You're going to get changes in responsibilities. You're going to get changes in the enterprises you work on. And it's really a valuable thing. You're going to get changes in behaviors you get pulled up on for sure when you take care of the other ones. But with all this change, changing yourself spiritually and mentally takes place. And I appreciate this place and all the change it's created in my life. And, that's ultimately why, I chose to do a third year, because I could see the change it was creating, and I wanted to make the change myself as well. So with that, we thank you, Rich, and can we give him a round of applause, please? And then also with change, me and Tyson have been doing this for about a year now, and I believe this is going to be Tyson's last time taking part in this class. He's always helped. We kind of work together finding speakers and stuff like that. And I want to say thank you, Tyson. It's been great having you be part of this, and I appreciate it. Let's give Tyson a round of applause, please.